Imagine waking up with a fever. Nothing unusual until you notice a painful swelling beneath your arm. By tomorrow, you're barely able to stand. Your neighbors are sick. Your family is sick. And nobody knows why. There are no antibiotics, no modern hospital, no laboratory tests, and a doctor standing beside you has almost no idea what's actually happening. Throughout history, humans have faced diseases that didn't simply kill. Some disfigured you, some paralyzed you, some slowly destroyed your lungs, and one could turn a tiny animal bite into an almost certain death sentence. These are some of the most horrifying diseases in human history. Number 1. The Black Death. Let's begin with perhaps the most infamous pandemic in human history. In the 14th century, the Black Death swept across Europe, North Africa, and Asia. The disease behind many of these deaths was plague, caused by the bacterium named Yersinia pestis. One common form was bubonic plague. At first, you might develop a fever, chills, weakness, then your lymph nodes could begin swelling. These painful swellings were called buboes. They could grow to frightening sizes, and in the 14th century, doctors had no antibiotics to stop the infection. People tried herbs, bloodletting, strange medicines, and religious rituals. Nothing could reliably save them. Entire households disappeared. Villages were devastated. Cities struggled to bury their dead. Within only a few years, the Black Death killed tens of millions of people. Imagine watching everyone around you become sick without even understanding what was causing it. Number 2. Smallpox. For thousands of years, another disease followed humanity almost everywhere we went. Smallpox. It usually began with fever, fatigue, and severe discomfort. Then, the rash appeared. Spots spread across the body before developing into fluid-filled lesions. For some, the disease was fatal. Those who survived could be left with permanent scars. Some lost their sight. And unlike an enemy army, smallpox didn't care whether you were rich, poor, powerful, or helpless. It killed ordinary people. It killed rulers. It devastated communities that had never encountered it before. For centuries, humanity simply lived with the threat. Then something remarkable happened. Vaccination gave us a weapon. Countries launched massive campaigns to hunt down every remaining outbreak. And in 1980, smallpox became the first human disease ever officially declared eradicated. One of history's greatest killers was finally gone. Number 3. Cholera. Now imagine you're perfectly healthy in the morning, then suddenly you become sick, violently sick. Cholera attacks the intestines. In severe cases, the body can lose enormous amounts of water and salts through diarrhea. The transformation can happen frighteningly quickly. Your mouth becomes dry, your muscles cramp, your eyes sink, your blood pressure falls. Without replacing the lost fluids, the body begins to shut down. Historically, people could deteriorate with terrifying speed, and before scientists understood contaminated water, cities repeatedly suffered massive outbreaks. People blamed bad smells, the weather, or poisonous air. Meanwhile, the real danger could be sitting inside the water they drank every day. Today, cholera can often be treated with something astonishingly simple: water, salt, and sugar, just in the correct proportions. A disease that once seemed unstoppable can often be defeated by replacing what the body is losing. Number 4. Leprosy. Few diseases have carried as much fear and stigma as leprosy. Today, we call it Hansen's disease, and despite centuries of frightening stories, it isn't nearly as contagious as people once believed. But untreated disease can still cause serious damage. The bacteria attack nerves, skin, eyes, and other tissues. Over time, parts of the body can lose sensation, and that creates a strange danger. Pain normally protects you. Touch something hot and you pull away. Step on something sharp and you stop. But if you can't feel the injury, you might keep damaging yourself without even realizing it. Repeated wounds and infections could eventually cause severe disability, but historically, the disease itself was only part of the suffering. People with leprosy were feared, rejected, and sometimes isolated from society. A person could survive the disease only to lose their community instead. Number 5. Tuberculosis. Not every horrifying disease kills quickly. Some take their time. Tuberculosis has followed humanity for thousands of years. It usually attacks the lungs. At first, you might simply have a cough. Then, the cough doesn't leave. Weeks become months, you grow weaker, you lose weight, you develop fevers and night sweats. Eventually, some patients begin coughing up blood. Historically, the disease was sometimes called consumption because it appeared to slowly consume the person suffering from it. Before effective antibiotics, there was no reliable cure. Some patients were sent to sanatoriums, where doctors hoped rest, fresh air, and nutrition might help. Sometimes the body's immune system actually managed to control it. Sometimes it just didn't. Unlike a plague that used to rise dramatically and disappear, tuberculosis could remain inside communities year after year after year. Number 6. Polio. Now imagine you're a parent. Your child develops a fever, maybe a headache, maybe some weakness. Most polio virus infections never cause paralysis, but for an unlucky minority, the virus reaches the nervous system. Suddenly, muscles stop working. A leg might become paralyzed. An arm might become paralyzed. And in most severe cases, the muscles responsible for breathing could fail. Before modern intensive care, that created a terrifying problem. How do you keep someone alive when they can no longer breathe properly? One answer was the iron lung. The patient's body was placed inside a giant metal cylinder. Changes in air pressure helped move their chest, allowing them to breathe. Some patients used these machines for weeks, others for years. Then, vaccines changed everything. In much of the world, a disease that once terrified parents has become something younger generations have barely encountered. Number 7. Ebola. In 1976, doctors encountered a frightening disease in Central Africa, Ebola. The virus can begin with symptoms that resemble many ordinary infections: fever, weakness, muscle pain, headache. But some patients become severely ill, vomiting, diarrhea, organ damage, and in some cases, bleeding. Outbreaks are especially frightening because Ebola can spread through direct contact with infected bodily fluids. That means the people caring for the sick can themselves become exposed. Doctors, nurses, family members, funeral workers, modern protective equipment is enormously important. But during outbreaks, in places with limited resources, containing the virus can become incredibly difficult. Unlike some ancient diseases, Ebola isn't a distant historical nightmare. It exists right now, and outbreaks still occur. Number 8. Rabies. But perhaps the most terrifying disease on this list can begin with something almost laughably small. That is a bite, maybe from a dog, a bat, or another infected mammal. The wound might not even look serious. You clean it, you go home, and for weeks or even months, nothing happens. Meanwhile, the rabies virus can travel through your nerves, right toward the brain. Eventually, the symptoms begin: fever, pain, confusion, agitation, difficulty swallowing. Then comes one of rabies' most famous symptoms: hydrophobia, the fear of water. But a patient isn't simply psychologically afraid. Trying to swallow can trigger painful spasms. They may desperately want water, yet struggle to drink it. As the disease progresses, the nervous system begins failing. Paralysis can follow. And here is a truly horrifying part. Once clinical symptoms of rabies appear, the disease is almost always fatal. Modern medicine can only prevent this if treatment begins before symptoms appear. Vaccination and other preventive treatment can stop the virus, which means you can feel completely healthy while a countdown has already begun. So, for most of human history, disease was an enemy we couldn't even see. People blamed spirits, bad air, curses, the stars, anything that might explain why someone healthy yesterday could be dying today. Then we discovered bacteria, viruses, vaccines, antibiotics, sanitation, clean water, and slowly the balance began to change. Smallpox was eradicated, polio was pushed to the edge of extinction, diseases that once killed without mercy became preventable or treatable. But they left behind one important reminder. Human beings were never the only creatures fighting to survive. Sometimes the most terrifying enemy wasn't a giant predator, an invading army, or a natural disaster. It was something so small you couldn't even see it coming.